So, did y'all watch the game on Sunday?
I did.
Yeah,
Were you excited about the outcome? Were you voting for Taylor Swift? I mean, for the Chiefs, or who are you voting for?
I was rooting for the Chiefs, but my daughter is a huge Swiftie, huge Swiftie. So she was in Disney World for cheer, so she didn't get to watch it, but I'm sure she would have been all about Taylor Swift being on the screen the whole night.
Yeah, I mean, look, she's generated over $300 million in revenue for the NFL this year, so
Yeah.
you can't blame her for getting from some screen time.
I know.
So, yeah, it was
Huge.
a good game. I mean, close
It was a
game.
very good game. Yeah. Yeah. I also have a family of Swifties right now. So it's I had no choice but to root for the Chiefs.
Yeah. If you're jumping on, go and let us know what you thought, who you were voting for the Super Bowl. We're gonna get started in just a minute while everyone gets their tech stuff squared away. But I'd love to hear who you were voting for and what you thought about the game. I told my wife, I have some friends who, I was actually more acquaintances, but I have some friends who said, "Well, it's all rigged. You know, the NFL already knows who's gonna win," and I don't necessarily believe in that, but I have to say. It was it seemed like the perfect storm. You know what I mean? Like NFL revenue rising, T Swift on screen a whole lot, Travis Kelce. It's just like if there was a time to bet preseason, I should have bet some money on the 49ers as soon as I found out T Swift was in the running, you know?
Yeah.
Probably. Missed opportunity there.
Yeah. Yeah. But it was a good game. That overtime was good. So,
Yeah. It's tough to beat Mahomes in overtime, I feel. It's just the experience. He just finds a way to win. What are you gonna do? You know?
yeah. Good for you, Bernadette, for not watching. Yeah.
Oh, here's a question. What do you think about Usher?
Loved him.
Yeah.
Loved him. I thought he was one of the best Super Bowl shows that I've seen in a long time. He was fantastic.
I agree. He was good. Really good. He's got the moves.
I
Yeah, he
have to
did.
confess, I slept through the first three quarters.
Uh,
But
what?
I was just coming back from high school winter camp with a bunch of high schoolers in some high elevation with 2 foot snow. So I was pretty wiped out. I got back at noon. The game started at 3. So
High school winter camp. That sounds interesting.
yeah, it was fun. Lots of injuries, snow and winter camp. But with that, let's let's get started, folks. I'm gonna do some introductions and some housekeeping, and then we're gonna get into the topic of tonight's webinar, which is medical billing with our awesome panel. So first up, one, you gotta know this is a CE webinar. So if you are here and you want your CE, then you have to stay to the very end where we give you the link. So wait for that link. The survey will take you roughly 3.7 seconds to complete. Once you complete the survey, you will immediately following get an email with the email you put in the survey with your CE certificate. If it doesn't come, please check your spam. That does occasionally happen, but that should come from Awaken to Sleep, Sleep EDU at awakentosleep.com, and you'll get that certificate right away. If you do not get that certificate, again, check your spam and you can email us tomorrow morning. We will respond. Additionally, this webinar is recorded, so all the cool little facts and figures you're going to get here, all the insights into medical billing and the craziness that is in the industry right now, those are all going to be recorded for your viewing pleasure at any point in time, and will be available on our website. A slight change if you're a regular person in our webinars. We used to email immediately following the webinar. We will now email you tomorrow late morning with the webinar recording, a CE link if you missed it from our conversation tonight, and any of the resources that we promise in the actual discussion. With that, let me introduce you to our panel. My name is Chad. I'm really not important tonight, but I am the Director of Operations here at Awaken to Sleep, and I have the privilege of helping navigate the conversation on overcoming the changes that are coming to this medical billing space, everything from the K code to Medicare to maybe even some talk about the new Inspire guidelines and what that's going to do for our industry. We'll see about that. But on my left, I don't know if you can see him or not, I've got John Neerman. He's the president of Neerman Wow, that was wrong. Of Nearman Practice Solutions. He has an amazing software called Dental Writer, and also has been teaching courses for a good long while. He's actually done something like 5,000 hours of continuing education, helping dentists and dental teams like you learn more about sleep. John, say hello, and then also tell them your favorite food.
Uh, Thank you, Chad. Always great to be here, and I'm excited about tonight's webinar. My favorite food is, I have to go with pasta. Could eat it every
Okay.
day.
Wow. Yeah, I can relate to that. Pizza. Pizza is on my top of the list. I also have Laura from Brady Billing. Laura is got a very fun story because she works in a medical billing company as a medical biller and as a trainer, and moved from actually working in a dental practice into providing the medical billing, and kind of became a CE junkie, I believe, in helping learn about this and then moving into teaching it. It is a special thing when someone goes from learning about something to teaching something. She's been doing this for 7 years full time, and knows the ins and outs of medical billing and what her clients are actually doing right now that's getting them paid. Laura, what's your favorite food? And why don't you say hello?
Hello, thanks for having me. So my favorite food, man, I'm kind of on par with John, but I'm gonna have to go cheese fries. I'm a carb junkie, and I feel like anything with cheese is just even better. It's cheese fries. There's no doubt.
You know, I did a carb-free diet last year, and
Oh no.
potatoes were not on the carb list.
Really?
So I don't know. It seems suspect to me, but I was living it up. French fries and hash browns all day. Last but not least, I have sorry, technically Dr. Alejandra Faria, but she doesn't want to be called doctor because she wants it to be more relatable to you, because that is who she is and how she does. Dr. Alejandra is kind of the administrative genius behind sleep apnea gurus. She has single-handedly helped build out this practice that's now spanning a couple different states and several different locations. And I can't even imagine the billable amounts that are submitted to claims with their different contracts. I'm talking to her husband, Dr. Jeff Paz. I know that really he just shows up, scans patients, and delivers appliances, and she runs the business entirely, which means that she's actually the one who should get all the credit here. And so, Alejandra, why don't you say hello and share with us your favorite food?
Hi, thank you for having me. Thank you. I guess that the $100 that I gave you did work.
Waiting on the check. I'm just kidding.
Thank you very much for having me. And yeah, it's been a wonderful journey, and we love to be able to help and make the transition easier and happier. I think that is one of the most beautiful areas that you can be in medicine and dental. So we're going at it. But thank you very much for the introduction. And yeah, I guess that the Dr. Paz does talk very highly about me. Very, very.
It was pretty funny. We were interviewing him a couple of weeks ago, and we were like, "Hey, question, question, question." He's like, "Dude, I just got a backpack with a scanner, and I show up and I do the thing, and I send all to Alejandra. You're gonna have to ask her. I don't know." So yeah, it does speak to one, how much he trusts you, but also how much of a handle to have the operation you have and do what you do. So yeah, what is your favorite food, by the way?
Oh, favorite food. I have to debate between Japanese and Mexican. I'm more into the taco and the sashimi, so it's very, very different, but I love both of those.
Awesome. Awesome. All right, folks. Well, we're going to get right into it. One quick note. If you have a comment, you want to jump in with an amen or something like that, go ahead and put it in our chat box. You have the ability to chat. If you have questions, we have a question and answer function. And then if you want to just emote, you want to express joy, gratitude, frustration, whatever, there's a little reactions button in your Zoom window as well. We definitely encourage the use of that. So with that, you helped build the webinar tonight. You gave us questions, we processed them, and we are now going to ask those questions to our panel tonight. That doesn't mean you don't get to ask more questions. It just means that's where we're going to get started. So with that, we're going to start with a fundamental question for our panel tonight. And that question is, as soon as I can start my PowerPoint, one moment. This is one of those Zoom hacks where you know you're supposed to do these things beforehand, but then you forget. That's what we did here. All right. So our first question of the night is, how can a dental office incorporate medical billing for their sleep treatments? The question was actually proposed because the dental office asking this knows that their dental clearinghouse doesn't bill medical. I don't believe any dental clearinghouses do that. So I'm going to pick John because you teach a lot of CEs. So what is the first thing you recommend? Very practical for our group tonight.
Well, in the shortest way possible to answer this question, I would say you need systems. Because just like that question that came in, the dental software, it doesn't have the medical clearinghouse. So, you want to have a system that can accommodate the requirements that you need for medical billing, which is a different level of documentation. And if you want to do it in-house, you can use a software like Dental Writer Plus or an EMR that can integrate with the clearinghouse where you can submit those claims. So having those systems in place is going to make the difference, and having your team trained on the processes.
Awesome. Laura, you also have a lot of clients with medical billing, and a lot of those who are doing probably restorative work as well. What is it that you see as the most impactful thing they can do to implement medical billing for sleep treatment?
So I agree with John about processes. I think that's a huge deal in really learning the ins and outs of sleep first and knowing what type of documentation that you need to have on file, what you need to send to your biller if you're using a third-party billing company. Even just like the most basic of medical billing, going to one of those courses, I think is probably going to be one of your biggest assets to your practice to start doing medical billing. I would never suggest just trying to do it on your own, at least not initially. I would definitely try to do some CE first and then also start to look into some of your third-party billers. There are so many great billers out there that can help you. And I think that initially using that crutch for starting medical billing is probably going to be one of your best bets.
Awesome. Alejandra, you've done this. I know you and Dr. Paz went straight into sleep. It's kind of why I saved you for last, but you also worked in other practices as an associate. So what have you seen in this respect?
I have to agree with John and the systems. I think that anybody can fail but a system. So that's what we have seen as the number one thing to go by. You have to have a system in place. Training, number one thing. Usually you hear, if you want to go for it and then you go to a salesperson, I mean, let's call it a medical manufacturer. I mean, we just salesperson in general, they're going to tell you that it's the easiest thing to do in the world, and that you're just going to be if you get their product is going to be the easiest thing to do. No, that's definitely not the case. Strongly advise the training. Strongly advise having systems in place. And strongly advise not starting, like Laura was saying, not starting and doing it everything on your own. You will end up with no hair. See, Dr. Paz. I had to say something about me. I'll find something. But no, honestly, it gets to the point that you're like you just want to give up, and there's a lot of potential just by finding someone that can guide you through it. And right now, there's a lot of different ways to do it and to learn with different options, because in the past we would just be focused in one way. Now it's different ways, even different codes. So yeah.
We're going to get to different codes in a minute or two here. And I do remember about 8 years ago, it was easy. You could just kind of shoot an arrow in the dark and kind of hit something. But insurance companies got smart because a lot of people started firing those arrows, and now it's harder to get paid. So you heard it, systems, most important, agreed upon. Alejandro dropped one there that's training. We don't train on medical billing. We coach on the systems piece, but I know you can look up John's website for some training. They've got some cool resources as well. But that's our first question. We started with an easy one, so we can get going into the next one. The next question for us is, And I'm going to start with Dr. Alejandra here. What are the key strategies for billing in dental sleep medicine, including appliance billing and quick reimbursements? We see a couple folks ask questions about billing for appliances using current modifiers, a couple people getting denials for E0486, and interested in the new changes and requirements needed for claims and for quicker reimbursement. So Alejandra, this is your baby and your practice, Sleep Apnea Gurus. What gets the best results the fastest?
So basically knowing what's the information paperwork that you need to have. I guess that the first thing that I go in whenever we do open another market is to make sure that everybody knows exactly what insurance is going to need. I usually go by the Medicare guidelines because if you go by the Medicare guidelines, it's going to be just as straightforward. If Medicare asks for it, almost everyone is going to, and Medicare usually asks for more. So if you have more, it's better than missing. So pre-notes, I read in one of the questions, maybe I'm getting ahead of myself, but I have always worked in practices that they do the pre-notes, meaning that the physician is referring the patient to have a sleep study done. I've heard some places that they did some insurances that didn't require them. I recommend to always have that. So pre-notes, meaning the physician is referring the patient to have a sleep study done. The sleep study that most insurances, that's another very important thing to check if the insurance is going to accept the PSG. Nowadays, some insurances do not accept PSGs, just HSTs. Of course, an AHI of over 5 events an hour. The post notes where the physician is telling I'm not going to say physician because it can be provider at this point. The provider is telling the patient that they actually do have sleep apnea and recommending a form of treatment and the letter of medical necessity or prescription. So I would say that would be the fastest way to get paid. I would never initiate a patient without having all those pieces of information because that is just going to either deny the claim or take a lot longer. And always providing the patient the out-of-pocket. I have found that if the patient knows beforehand what are they expecting to invest in the oral device, they would make a more informed decision.
Cool. Couple of things there, folks. We have pre-notes, making sure physicians are seeing the patient before home sleep test. The patient doing a home sleep test, not a polysomnogram. I've not heard that one, but I know typically that they won't do a home sleep test before or a polysomnogram until they do a home sleep test. So that makes a lot of sense. And then also that recommendation and diagnosis for treatment. So awesome. Laura, how about yourself? What do you see? Anything you want to add on to Alejandra's response there?
Sure. So I think some of the topics that you touched on was billing for appliances and using the correct modifiers. So
Yeah.
starting there, so there's generally only 2 modifiers that you're going to need in order to bill appliances, and that's NU, N as in November, U as in uniform, and that means that it's a purchase, it's not a rental. And then KX is only typically used on Medicare claims, Medicare Advantage claims. But KX modifier is basically telling them that the documentation that you are required to have is on file if they were to request it. Now, a lot of these medical insurance companies are already requesting this at the time of the claim. So even if you've gotten an authorization prior to the treatment, and you file the claim, then they're still coming back on the back end and requesting those clinicals anyways, even sometimes when you do have the KX modifier on there. There are some other modifiers that are typically done with Medicare. I won't confuse too much of those just because it gets a little bit more in depth, but there are a few other modifiers that can be used as well. Now, somebody asked about bundling for EO486 and no other services were provided on that data service. I'm wondering in that scenario if they build an office visit on the same claim form as billing the E0486, because a lot of times when you do that, or not a lot of the times, but sometimes when you do that, that EO486 code gets bundled into the office visit. And so they're only going to pay you for the office visit. They're not typically going to turn around and pay for the appliance as well. So you don't want to bill office visits and an appliance code on the same claim form. That would be my best advice. And I really like clean claim forms. And what I mean by that is I don't like to see a bunch of dates of service on one claim form. I feel like whenever you bill those services on separate claim forms, then those claims go through a lot cleaner. You're only having to send records for one date of service that way. You're not getting them all confused. So I just like seeing that really clean billing of just doing one date of service on one claim form, especially if you're billing on your own. But I think those were the topics that we touched on. Correct me if you can think of something else.
You're good. There's two follow-up questions I'm going to ask all of y'all
Okay.
on this one, so we'll come back in a second. So
Okay.
yeah, John, anything to add there?
No, I would just say, what Alejandro said, you know, we have a saying at Nerman, it's what you do up front that counts. And we end up saying that every single day. That's basically, you know, what it is, for just maximizing your efficiency with reimbursement. And then of course our motto, get your ducks in a row, which is the same thing. You know, you just want to have everything up front, make sure you have that checklist. And I like what you said about, you know, just when in doubt, go with Medicare's guidelines, just to be safe. But, you know, when you do that verification of benefits, you'll want to make sure you ask the right questions to know exactly what's required.
Right. I've got one question that should be pretty quick. You guys can even hold up fingers if you want to, but how recent does a sleep study need to be to qualify for insurance? I'm going to put this in simple terms, 1 or 2 years. Is it 1 or is it 2? 1. Okay.
Let me Laura confirm. There's not. Is there any that do it 6 months or something like that, or am I confused?
No, not that I know of that require them within 6 months. It has to be within a year. So a year of diagnosis to the time that you're actually billing the appliance. After that, you're going to have a new study.
Cool. Lisa, our friend from Florida as well, I believe, put in a question or a comment about the bundling of services. Lisa, we'll come back to this near the end. I haven't forgotten you, but it looks like a very specific application. So here's one of the questions I want to ask, because this is touching on one of the things that we've been getting a lot of feedback from our coaching clients on, and that is insurance companies are getting more strict and changing their rules. And what I mean by that is I believe it's following a lot of the Medicare guidelines. Things such as if a physician does not prescribe the home sleep test, then they won't pay for the appliance. Or things such as if a physician doesn't see the patient face to face and prescribe a home sleep test and then meet with that patient again before the appliance, they also won't pay. That's a Medicare guideline, and I know certain companies are doing that. So did I accurately describe that? And what other new changes are coming that are going to get in the way of getting these claims paid as quickly as possible? I'm going to start with you, Laura. What do you think? Did I hit that right? What do you got to add to that?
So it goes back to what Alejandra said, and that a lot of the medical guidelines are starting to follow Medicare guideline, which is kind of what you referred to, and that they have to have a face-to-face with a physician who orders the sleep study, and then that physician is able to refer them out to have an oral appliance. I would say, man, I just pulled medical policies, and I think all but one insurance company requires that now. So it definitely, when in doubt, go towards Medicare guideline would definitely be one of the best pieces of advice that any of us can ever give you. I always tell people Medicare is your papa bear. And so whatever Medicare does is typically going to trickle down to the commercial insurance companies as well. So go ahead and start to pull that Medicare guideline pretty consistently. And like I said, I just pulled medical policies this month, and the majority of them are requiring that face-to-face with that physician before being referred out to have an oral appliance.
Got it. So there is no post-sleep study face-to-face for Medicare?
No, so the medical policy doesn't say anything about post-sleep
Cool.
study after. I think you mean like the physician sees the patient and then reads the sleep study, and then you're saying, is there another post note needed? Are you saying that the physician needs to follow up with the patient after the appliance is delivered?
If there's follow-up required, I don't do medical claims, so I've heard some
Okay.
offices there. So if that's not required, that's not required. I spoke incorrectly. I apologize. Thanks, Mark,
No,
for
you're
jumping in with
okay.
that.
No, they should definitely have some sort of follow-up with the physician even after the appliance is delivered, though. So whenever it comes to CPAP, they want to see that patient compliant within 45 days. So I would not entirely see them or not see them not go towards that. So
Yeah.
I think that Medicare could require them to actually have that post or appliance delivery visit.
Cool. John, Alejandra, anything else you guys want to add to that? If not, we'll move on to the next question.
Yeah, I agree with Laura. I haven't really seen that. I mean, the only thing I'm thinking is, some require primary care physician referral first, but that's still first. So.
Yeah. Okay. Awesome. We have a lot of questions on Medicare, so I'm going to pause here before we move on. Claire asks, where can I find the Medicare guidelines?
Sure. So you can just Google Medicare LCD, Lima, Charlie, Delta, LCD for the code E0486, and it'll pull it right up.
Awesome. Cool. There was a rumor at the end of the year, last year, about Medicare not allowing telemedicine visits. Is this the case, or did that get pushed back? Any updates on that?
The last time I checked with the person that I use for sleep studies, they told me that they couldn't, but I don't quote me on that. I know that they are not doing it anymore. I'm not sure. My sister does work for a hospital, and she did tell me that a lot of the telemedicine, when they lifted COVID, it was not being paid for anymore. But I honestly don't know. It's a rumor, as you said.
Okay. John and Laura?
I've still seen them doing telehealth, and honestly, at Roundtable, I think we had this discussion about telehealth and Medicare, and I cannot remember what Medicare said as far as maybe John remembers, or John, I guess it was, I guess you weren't there, but I remember Medicare distinctly mentioning something about telehealth, but I could be wrong.
Yeah, I think that was Corey that was there.
It was
but,
Corey, yeah.
when we looked it up, we saw that it looked like it was extended until the end of 2024.
Yeah,
Okay.
and that sounds right.
Okay. So the question, and we'll tag this on at the end, not right now, but the question I want you all to consider is, what happens when telemedicine isn't allowed, yet we have to have physician consults? So we'll come back to that though. Let's look at our next question. How do we manage denials and insurance refund demands for dental sleep medicine services? We've got some concerns about the new K code, Blue Cross Blue Shield doing some crazy stuff we've heard about, and verbiage how to explain to patients, especially about when you join networks and not. Laura, I'm gonna start again with you on this one. How do you manage denials and refund requests?
So I don't personally see a whole lot of refund requests, to be completely honest. That's very rare for me to see. Now, those refund requests definitely want to be investigated a little bit before you just hand your money back over. So a lot of times the downfall of calling medical insurance whenever you have one of those refund requests is everybody kind of throws their hands up at you and they just say, we don't know why you're getting a refund request. Nobody can really answer that question. So it's going to be a struggle of actually getting to a point where somebody can answer that question for you. But I wouldn't necessarily just jump to go ahead and pay them back. Now, eventually, if you don't pay them back, then they'll just start retaining their payment from what you've already delivered. So they'll start retaining your payment from what you're supposed to be getting paid. So that's something to think about. Now, denials, it's going to go back to what Alejandra and John said in the very beginning about having your documentation lined up, because as long as your documentation is lined up, when it comes to the denials, there shouldn't be really much of an issue unless it's a strange case But whenever they're requesting medical records, it's typically going to be the reason for denial. And I would say, as long as your documentation is good, then your denials should be pretty minimal or permanent denials, meaning denials that don't ever get paid. As long as your documentation is good, then you should be getting paid.
Got it. One little thing that we learned a long time ago, back when we used to ship home sleep tests, which if you used to know us, we don't do that anymore, in case you didn't know. If you allow direct deposit for insurance companies to cut you checks, they can pull that money right back out of your bank account. So just be mindful of that. There was some scary posts going on about Blue Cross Blue Shield doing some crazy stuff, as they are known to do. So with that, Alejandra, what do you think? What about the question being, how do you handle denials specific to the K code, and then also as refund requests?
I'm gonna have to completely agree with Laura.
Okay.
If the case is that you have all your documentation and there's no there's no, I don't think that there's anyone that can tell you, oh, this is the exact reason. So we go back to the system. I'm gonna be I'm gonna sound like a broken record, but systems are what are gonna save you from all that. If you have all your documents in order, if you have a little bit more than what you need. I'm not saying that to get things that you know that are not necessary, but if you're not sure, always have that extra paperwork in handy and for the patient in case that you get an audit or get a denial. I've had very, very few denials, and when I do, I have to send the paperwork, and usually it gets resolved.
I'm going to pause right there. So a denial is not necessarily permanent. And I'm guessing this is the same for someone who's requesting that you pay them back the money they paid. What you just said is that if you have the documentation in the right place, you can actually fight that denial and get it turned over so they actually pay you.
Correct.
Okay. I'm not the medical billing genius, as some of our attendees can attest to already. Is there a place, or is that just with the resolution center with the insurance company, or is that in a software like what John has, or how does that work?
It depends who you work with, definitely. I mean, if you're doing it by yourself, they will usually ask you to do it either via snail mail, either their portal, I mean, they would guide you through there, and you will have to make a million calls, obviously. We have a specific case that actually we got paid today. Medicare, oh gosh, I forgot the word. Replacement. Thank you. I'm sorry. Medicare replacement. It took us about 6 months to get paid. Denial after denial after denial with all the paperwork. It took the patient to call and to say, I need to speak to this person. So the patient was in our practice. She called. She said, I'm not gonna let you go until I speak to a manager. And I would say if 3-4 weeks later, we got our payment.
Wow. Yeah. John, I see you smiling and doing some good head nodding. What you want to add anything to that?
It's, it's just a part of the insurance. We call like a denial, we call it just a stalling tactic. So,
I
just
really like that.
yeah, right. That's all it is.
I think that's actually a really good segue into I think one of the most important questions here. Verbiage on how to explain to a patient what's going on with insurance. That might have been one of those. The insurance has given us a stalling tactic to not pay us on time. Any other verbiage tips?
Man, so I have lots of verbiage tips just from working with patients. So I guess it just depends on what topic exactly. Like, I don't know if you mean explaining to a patient that you're out of network and not knowing what insurance is going to pay, or having to explain to them that insurance is not really in the business of actually paying people out. They would like to hold on to their money as long as they can. Just like most of us, right? So, yeah, I guess just depending on what verbiage you're looking for, I can probably help.
Let's focus on the denial verbiage. When insurance doesn't pay or doesn't pay as much as you thought they would, what do you say to a patient?
So typically, whenever insurance is not paying as much as they would, I don't see a whole lot, or as much as expected. I don't see a whole lot of offices that are turning around and going after the patient. Typically, between the medical biller and if you have experience, you're able to kind of estimate what insurance is going to allow pretty accurately. So I don't see a whole bunch of issues whenever you're actually having to request additional money from the patient. So that's an experience thing for sure. And again, a great reason to work with somebody who does medical billing regularly, because they can help you with that verbiage. Now, when it comes to denials, you can absolutely let them know, again, this is medical insurance. They do not want to actually pay out the claim. So they can absolutely assist with that denial, like Alejandra said, and call their insurance and let them know that you as the provider has sent in all the documentation. You're doing exactly what they've asked you to do. And they can call their insurance and ask them to go ahead and process the claim. Sometimes when you put the ball back into the patient's court, it helps them to understand a little bit more that it's not necessarily falling on the provider, it's falling on the insurance company. And that's sometimes a really hard pill to swallow for a patient. It's just understanding that it's not you not doing what you're supposed to do, it's the insurance company not doing what they're supposed to do.
I love that. And I'll add to that, when those denials happen and the patient gets that letter from the insurance company, the way that they word their letters makes it seem like the insurance is on the patient's side and the provider isn't. And so I think kind of turning the tables and playing that same game and making it an us versus them, which is actually the reality of the situation, and making sure that the patient doesn't get caught up in that, because if you see that language, it can be confusing for the patient, and make it seem like the provider did something wrong. Yeah, make it us versus them, patient and provider versus the insurance company to maximize the patient's benefits.
Awesome. Alejandra?
Yeah, I guess that's the main thing, that usually they're gonna blame it on the provider. So basically, I would say from the beginning, I think that the first call, it's the one that is gonna guide most of how the results are going to be. So what I usually do is that I say, your insurance, this is what your insurance provided me with, this is what your insurance deductible is. I repeat a lot the word your insurance, just putting it always on the insurance. And then the joke in Sleep Apnea Gurus is why are there so many stadiums named after them? So if you have the money to build a stadium, I guess that you are keeping a lot of the money. So that sometimes work whenever the patient is really mad. But yeah, the wording from the beginning to let them own that it's the insurance and it's not the provider. I think that it has a lot to do with the patient wanting to help at the end if need so.
Awesome. Cool. I love that verbiage on the stadium.
Me too. I think that's great.
And
All
I
right.
love just having that's what we say too, just let them know this is your plan. We have nothing to do with it, but we're going to help you maximize, tap into those benefits, but this is your plan. You signed up for it.
Yep.
Yeah, and the differences in plans are pretty substantial. Yeah, it's, there are still zero deductible plans out there. They're hard to find, but they exist. So moving into our next question, how to secure in-network contracts, particularly for sleep apnea treatments in the dental practice. Here, we also want to kind of go into a couple questions about the K code in billing those contracts out. I know being in network and billing the K code, that might help with reimbursement for that code, but what are you guys saying about that? And then also the pros and cons of going in network versus out of network for a dentist who treats sleep. When do you advise that shift, if ever? Alejandra, actually, no, I'm sorry. We haven't picked on John in a little while. John, go ahead and go first. What do you think in network versus out of network? Go.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think it depends on a few variables. So the decision points, I think, would be number one, if you're having success with billing out of network, then it might be beneficial to stay out of network. So I think, just kind of starting out, seeing what's coming in, what are the common insurance companies in your area that you're coming across. And if then you're finding success with out of network, then it might make sense to stay. Now, if you're in an area that is a little more saturated and the insurance plans don't have good out of network benefits, and you can't get a gap exception because there's other in-network providers, then it might make sense to go in-network. So those are kind of the two deciding points. If you can get case acceptance and really focus on selling the value, and if you're in an area that's not as price conscious, then again, you might want to stay out of network and just focus on selling value. But if you're in an area that is more price conscious and the patients are making decisions based on price and affordability, then start looking at in-network.
Awesome. Alejandra, in network, you guys have a lot of practices. I know you guys do a lot more in network in general, but what do you see for other practices out there that you talk to?
So as you said in the beginning, years ago, this was a lot easier. It was very much easier to get a network, get reimbursed a decent amount, not just $600, but you can't even pay the device with that. I think that I'm gonna have to agree with John there. It would depend on the demographics completely. I just well, we're not a network with any commercial insurance.
Oh,
We
wow.
just-
Okay.
Yeah, we just use billing companies. I wouldn't even like to get started there. I mean, I know my the paperwork that I need to have and everything, but we use billing companies. We're in network with government contracts, but not
Got it.
commercial. So me personally, I would not. I would not recommend it, but again, as John is saying, there are places that you have to, and if you're able to get them, absolutely.
I did not know that. I thought you guys were more network because a lot of our bigger DSM only practices are network. So that's awesome. I mean, it's awesome because, sorry, for those that aren't reading between the lines, out of network typically means greater reimbursement.
Correct.
So that's why that's awesome. So, Laura, what do you think? Any other criteria you would add to John's 2 points of consideration for in-network versus out-of-network?
Yeah, so it's interesting because initially, whenever I got into sleep years ago, we kind of all had this policy where we were just all staying out of network. Everybody's kind of like, don't go in network. Everybody just stay out of network. You were able to obtain gaps a whole lot easier. Reimbursement was still great, even on a gap exception. So we kind of all said, let's just stay out of network. Well, I think as practices started to grow, like you said, these large DSM practices that do all sleep, that's when those network contracts became a need rather than just kind of something that you would toy with a little bit. So I think you're right that a lot of the larger DSM practices are going with contracts. Now, the downside, just like you said, is that you're going to get paid less in network and you don't have the option to balance bill the patient at all. So you have to accept their fee as payment in full. So that could be $1,000 for an appliance, and then you have a $600 lab bill. That just doesn't make a whole lot of sense to go in network. Now, sometimes you can get a great contract. So there are some of the blue plans. Sometimes United Healthcare will give you a great contract, but they're so hit or miss where I've seen somebody have a $3,500 contract for United Healthcare, and then the next client has a $1,700 contract. So you can always try to figure out what those contracted fees are ahead of time before you actually sign the contract, which is something that I would suggest that you do. But I also find it very interesting that in the dental world, so not the medical world, but you'll see a lot of conversation about dentists trying to go fee for service now. So they did initially get those network contracts and now they're trying to back out of them. And so do you accept that contract and go ahead and go in network with maybe better case acceptance? Or do you just stick with the fee for service model or staying out of network and then potentially not have to back out of that contract eventually anyways? I don't know. It's an interesting trend right now that I've noticed in dental. So is it going to happen in DSM too?
Well, we see, I mean, anecdotally, because we do a lot of training on implementation side. You know, back when sleep was being taught 5, 10 years ago, everyone taught medical billing and sleep because, like we said earlier, it was a little bit easier then. Nowadays, you know, people are learning some of those more sales skills and offering financing with their treatment plans and things like that that make the fee for service model easier. And frankly, your paperwork is a lot less on the fee for service side. And so I think there's a cost to revenue consideration there. So, with that, this question is a part of this, but about going in network, are there any insurance companies, medical insurance companies that will not accept a general dentist as a contracted provider?
It's the Blue Crosses that seem to be the issue, and it varies state to state, is what it seems like to me. So in one state, you might be able to get a Blue Cross contract. Sometimes they say that you have to be an oral surgeon. So if it's something that you're interested in, you can always reach out to contracting and ask them. A lot of times Blues go through Availity now, but you can go ahead and reach out to them and they'll come back and they'll tell you right away, hey, we don't accept dentists in the network, or you have to be an oral surgeon. So they're typically pretty quick to turn around and deny you access to their network. But I usually see it being the Blue Cross Blue Shields that won't allow a dentist to contract.
And for some of our folks, a practical question on what you said earlier about doing due diligence about the contract rates. Where does someone go, or what's the first step to go do that research and do the due diligence on that?
So initially you have to make sure that the network is open. So you can't just tell insurance, hey, I really want to be in network. Will you let me in network? And the network has to be open for your provider type. So that's the first part. Then you can contact contracting and start the contracting process. Now in that process, once you get towards the end of the contracting process, that's when they give you your fees. They're not going to give you your fees up front. So you have to kind of wait until the end of the process for them to actually tell you what that contracted rate's going to be, unfortunately.
So read the paperwork before you sign on the dotted line.
Yeah.
Okay.
Get your contracted fees.
Awesome. I want to hit this real quick. I don't want to spend a bunch of time on it, but one of the questions we got was about reciprocity. There's there's several insurance companies and state by state, plan by plan that require when you go in network on the medical side, that you also go in network on the dental side. This isn't avoidable if you're contracting the same NPI. I believe the only way to avoid it would be to get a different NPI. Organizational NPI, I think you can use a type 2 NPI, get contracted with that NPI, and then basically subcontract you as a dental provider. Did I say anything that was completely wrong? Check me. No?
That's correct.
Okay, cool. I did it. Well, look at me. There's my one medical billing nugget for the entire night. Moving on to the next question. I will say this, if you are struggling with that, we've had this happened more frequently in the last year than it's ever happened cumulatively in the last 6 years. So if you have questions on that, how that corporate structure works, obviously you can contact any of the speakers here, but that's our specialty, is that kind of coaching arena. So feel free to reach out to us. This is another quick question because we've got 6 questions right now in the chat. So I kind of expected as much, but what's the most affordable option for practices with low volume? They're not doing a lot to really want to do a heavy investment, but they want someone to do it for them, as you guys have recommended this evening. Where do they start for this?
You mean, like that's a loaded question, because it's like which biller is the most affordable? That's a very loaded question, actually.
Hey, they
So
asked it, not me. So let me rephrase it in a less loaded way. If you were starting over to do it, what would be the top 3 recommendations or top 3 softwares you would look into considering for your dental practice? as a medical billing service that's only considering doing this as a low volume provider. And I mean that in the frame of you want this to be like Invisalign or these crazy cool implant cases. You're only doing 1 to 3 cases a month as patients ask you about them. What would you do? And you can plug your own solution. I know that we've got.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm like, that's a great question for John. But what I would suggest initially, this is just my suggestion. If you're not willing to make the investment initially, I always say, see if your dental software can give you a toggle option. And what I mean by that is you essentially set up another practice within your dental software. So you're not having to come out a large chunk of money. So, or you're setting it up as a second location, right? So you completely have your sleep patients separate from your dental patients. So you're able to keep medical and dental records. So initially, I think that would probably be a good solution if you could do that. But again, some medical billers are going to have some software requirements. Some of us don't have software requirements. So it's just something to think about. So that would be my suggestion if you're a low volume practice and you don't want to invest in a software necessarily, is use what you have. See if that's something that you can't do.
Yeah, it's a good one. John, you're the software guy. So, I mean, what do you recommend? I know, well, I'll let you go.
I would first ask, what are their goals? Or if they only want to ever do, 1, 2 cases a year, then I agree with Laura. I mean, you really, you're not gonna be able to invest much if you're only gonna be doing, 1, 2 cases a year. Our company specifically we're set up to work with practices that want to grow their sleep case and do, at least a couple cases a year, 5, 6 cases a year, and have goals to do 5, 6 cases a month or more. So that's where we can really help a client. And if they just want to do 1 or 2, it's hard for us because there's so much upfront investment on our part with the training. It's more that the systems is great, but the team need to be trained, and we really hold their hand, and that's kind of what we've seen. It makes the difference. So that's one of the things that we just can't compromise on.
Yeah.
And so that's our market. But I don't see why you would only want to do a couple cases a year. This is such a rewarding field that I think that every dentist, number one, they should be screening every single patient. And just out of that, they can be just treating the ones that they're screening without really getting too much involved. So I think it's worth the investment.
Well, and I think you both said it pretty well. Now, to be fair, John works for Dental Writer and their billing solution, and Laura works with Brady Billing and their solution. And I think it's interesting that neither of them said pick me, because they want you to assess what you're doing. And I'll take Alejandro at you in just a second. But if you're not really looking to do more cases, then why are you doing medical billing? Would be my question to you. So, Alejandro, what do you got to say? You're in the practice. You're actually doing this. What do you recommend?
But yeah, I mean, the investment in time and as John said, Dental Writer really holds your hand. I mean, they do. So yeah, if you're not planning to do more than 5 cases a year, I would not recommend even the time spent in there. I mean, it's more for a commitment. I think that anybody that wants to do sleep, they want to. The first step I would say is setting a goal. I mean, how many do you want to do? How many are you doing right now? And how many do you think you can do? And if you think you can do it, very, very likely you will be able to do it. If not, I don't think that there's anything that's going to be affordable. And I don't think that in the dental sleep world, there's anything affordable. The lab fees are really high. I mean, there's a lot of things that you have to take into consideration if you want to go into that. If not, I mean, just fee for service, do a few cases and use whatever you have.
Cool. All right, we've got our last question, and I'm only going to do it because I'm going to narrow it down from its original scope because we've got a couple questions kind of about this, and everyone's heard about it. It's the talk of the town in dental sleep medicine. But what are the latest billing changes affecting dental sleep medicine, including insurer specific requirements? And to hone this in just a little bit, the K code. What is going on with the K code? And what is required or different about the K code, and when should you bill it? All right. I'm going to start off with Alejandro. Are you experienced with the K code? Do you know?
No, no.
Okay.
We're actually this week. It's funny that both of the questions is this week. This week we're gonna try it, but no, I have zero experience. I've never used it. I tried it for one patient this week.
Well, I'll say this. They have a very successful dental sleep medicine only practice in several locations, and they aren't using the K code yet. So it means you can do it without that. But Laura, let's go to you next. What do you got?
Yeah. So we're seeing like United Healthcare pay for it, but to be completely transparent, and again, this goes back to what Alejandro just said, a lot of our clients are too scared to bill it right now. So we've billed it in cases where the office delivered a non-Medicare approved appliance for whatever reason, and we've billed the K code like to United Healthcare, and it's paid just like EO 486. It's interesting because that K code a lot of times is not requiring an authorization, and I'm not sure if that's because it's new. But generally speaking, in the many benefits that I've done, even just this week, the majority of them have not required an authorization for the K code, which is interesting and a little bit scary. But yeah, a lot of our clients are just a little too iffy about it to even try it. Now, if you're one of the more high volume practices like Dr. Smith, then no issue billing them. So a lot of the data that I have comes directly from him because he's billing it. And he's billing it successfully, but not to all insurance companies.
Got it. John, what do you think?
I'll just back up a second. So the K code is the K1027. So the difference between K1027 and the E0486 is the K1027 has the description that says without fixed mechanical hinge. And so the reason why that came out was because of the E0486. The Medicare or the PDAC guidelines state that it has to have the fixed mechanical hinge, which then caused all these problems with what devices you can and can't use for some arbitrary reason that someone in Medicare made.
The picture of efficiency, that organization.
So, in theory, it's great because it opens it up to be able to use all the different devices that are FDA approved and can really help the patients. But what we're seeing is there's still no Medicare LCD. So Medicare hasn't set a fee, a payment for it. And what they've said is they're deferring to the local insurance companies to decide what they want to do. So until we get that Medicare LCD, there's really not going to be a standardized kind of rate or kind of guideline there. So we're just waiting on that. But we have seen some policies cover it, and we've seen some policies exclude it. So we're starting to see updates in the commercial policies, but there's still just not enough data, and there's no kind of central guideline from Medicare yet on what should be covered with that.
Awesome. We get a couple more questions. Before we get, just Sandovic, sorry if I butchered your name. No problems with volume for everyone else here. I'm going to share one last slide. Share for those of you that got to go because you're limited time span. We're at our hour. We're going to post that CE chat in just a moment, CE link. But we just want to let you know, one, we're going to be talking about this and some really amazing business concepts here in our Pivot DSM Masterclass in the next couple weeks to come. And so if you're ready to learn more about the business of sleep, we encourage you to check this out. This is a 2-day event in sunny San Diego, California. Last year was a fantastic time for everyone involved. And we've got some amazing speakers, including Dr. Kent Smith. He's actually, Laura works with him over at Brady Billing. Alicia Crawford and Stacy Lehman, as well as Dr. Singh, Harmandeep Singh, and Dr. Justin Ellicofer. All of these folks have delivered, except for Dr. Harmandeep Singh, he's a medical doctor, but these folks have delivered upwards of, well, Dr. Smith, tens of thousands of appliances, Stacy Lehman probably in there as well, and Justin, a couple thousand as well. So they've got lots of experience in building out a sleep practice. We have early bird pricing till April 1st, so go ahead and make sure you get your tickets now. You can learn more about the event, see what last year was like, and hear what doctors and team members are saying using that link. Post that in the chat in just a second. Additionally, if you have more questions after tonight about your business and what that looks like, you can use this QR code, which we'll put up on the next screen as well, just to answer any questions you have and talk about your business and your goals and what you're trying to accomplish in sleep. We do not provide medical billing services, but we're very familiar with the workflows, checklists, and processes that you need to build to go see success in any dental sleep medicine practice. And so we'll leave both those links here up in the PowerPoint. And I'm going to try to figure out how to put my attendee view back where I want it. So we're going to go here. All right. So with that, we've got a couple questions to answer in the chat. So let's keep on keeping on. If you got to go, the webinar CE is there, as well as a link to schedule and the link to learn more about the masterclass. Those are all in the chat for you. So going on from our questions, we had one question, which someone put in the chat, not the question, about modifiers for K1027. Are those the same modifiers for K1027 as they are for E0486?
So that KX modifier NU is definitely going to be put on there. That KX modifier, I've never put it on a claim. Now you definitely can. It would make sense to do that, but we only put that KX typically on like Medicare Advantage claims and Medicare claims. So I would definitely stick with the NU. Now the KX is questionable, but I would probably leave that modifier off and just do the NU.
Cool. We're going to rapid fire these so we can get our speakers home because they're in different time zones than I am. And so it's late o'clock for them. So let's keep on keeping on. If anyone else wants to jump in, just shout it out, okay? Sheila Jones asks, if we screen our patients and are supposed to send them to their MD to refer, if we screen our patients, are we supposed to send them to their MD to refer a sleep test when insurance is involved? Or can I hand out a home sleep test after I screen them in my practice and expect insurance to pay them?
That's
Go ahead, John.
that's a good question. That's kind of hard to answer in a rapid fire because again, there's a lot of kind of variables there. But I would just in general, I like to send them locally if you have those relationships or if you're trying to establish those relationships. I think that adds a lot of benefits. So when in doubt and whenever possible, go that route. That way you can develop those networks. But if that's not the case, then you can use a telemedicine solution there to get them a sleep test and get them, that telemedicine consult and the diagnosis. So I kind of like that hybrid model because the patient comes first, and I've seen where, if that patient can't get seen for 3-4 months, 6 months, then you got to get that patient to move forward. But it's really, you want to build those local relationships if possible too.
Yeah, sleeptest.com is a great provider of that service. They do everything A to Z and medical billing. So we're big fans of their service. With that, are there plans right now? And I mean, I'm sorry, Alejandra, you don't do a lot of testing because you're getting physician referrals all the time. But John and Laura, are there any plans that you saying that are still paying the administered home sleep test that was prescribed by the dentist, interpreted by an MD with the letter of medical necessity, But are those getting paid by insurances, or is it like 50-50 and plan by plan and state by state as all other things in medical insurance?
No, they're paying them. They're paying for the 95800 code, the HST code. The issue isn't so much with them paying them, it's more of a guideline issue. So the guideline says that a physician is the one that has to order the sleep test. So you could essentially dispense that HST from your office if the physician chose to do that, and you would be paid. But the issue more is that the guidelines say that they have to have a face-to-face with the physician prior to the sleep study. I think that's the confusion there. They are being paid though.
Okay. Cool. Face-to-face, important, especially with Medicare's guidelines. We have one question here from Dr. Tony. He says, earlier talking about the HST and the timeline, recent studies, what happens when a patient has a test on January 1st and diagnosed, starts CPAP and fails or refuses, and never does anything within the next several months? Are we not required to get another new test, 60-day rule? And follow up to that, I'm being told that my insurance get really specific about what type of home sleep test they'll accept, Ring versus WatchPat. I'm guessing probably type 3 or type 4. Any insights into those? Oh, you're muted, Laura?
Oh, I'm sorry, I'm muting you. There's a restaurant down below me, and so sometimes they're getting a little bit loud down there. They're having a little bit too much fun. So if you follow Medicare guideline, essentially what you're saying would be true. The patient would have CPAP dispensed, and then they have to show compliance within that 45-day range, right? And if they don't show compliance, then they need to go back to that physician, have another face-to-face. They need to kind of troubleshoot that CPAP, and they probably will. And then if for some reason they decide that they're no longer going to try CPAP, then that's when they have that year kind of guideline to actually be treated. Now, again, if you're following Medicare guidelines, then that's when the same and similar comes into play with CPAP and an oral appliance. So kind of a loaded question, a confusing question, but that study still technically is good as long as they're in continual treatment. That's the difference there.
Awesome. We had a couple questions answered in the chat, so I'm going to go through a couple of them just in case you guys didn't see where they were answered. We had, let's see, Dr. Vlog. What do you guys do when a patient needs a sleep study, but they do not have a personal physician or refuse to see one? These pre-study referrals suck. Alejandra, you mentioned in the chat there's a lot of groups that can do it for you, but what do you guys do in your practice when
we refer out? I
Okay.
do not recommend sending your patient. There was a question there to send them back to their physician. I would not recommend that. I would say that 1 out of 20 patients will go back to their PCP. So even us, our main referral source are physicians. Most physicians do refer to us for a sleep study. So I would recommend to look for sleep facility, a sleep
center.
group. There's a lot of sleep groups. I have a local one, so I wouldn't be able, unless you're in San Antonio, to provide you with different options. But it's honestly, you just go online, you look for a group that does a sleep study, and you send the patient there. But you function as the physician at that point. So you are the one that's going to be following up with the patient. You are going to be the one that's going to be following up with that group. And most of them are virtual. So patients do love virtual because nobody has time nowadays. So that's what we do.
Absolutely. John and Laura, you guys seen anything different there? I know sleeptest.com, iSleep Physicians, those are some great groups.
Yeah, I think that's when those groups come into play, like sleeptest.com, definitely for sure. But again, having that good referral source, so having physicians that you can refer to back and forth is a big deal too. Because a lot of times, like Alejandra said, you'll lose that patient and nothing will happen. So referral source, and then use those resources like sleeptest.com that can do that for you.
Cool. We had DJ Dental ask, we have a patient coming in Thursday who's wearing a full upper denture consult for an OSA appliance. Patient has Medicare. My doctor would like to know if we can charge extra since the lab will charge more for this special case. Alejandro shared that if he's in par or if he's par, then he cannot. If he's non-par, he can. So I'm gonna ask one more question on that. How can he if he's non-par, and what does that look like?
So if you're not a participating provider, you can basically say whatever your fee you want to be. If you're a participating provider, it's whatever Medicare tells you. It's like being in network or out of network. So that would be a question for whoever asked the question. If you're a participating provider, you can't. If you're a non-participating provider, absolutely, you can charge the patient whatever you think that they should be paying.
And don't accept assignment.
What was that?
Don't accept assignment.
Okay.
If
I don't know what that means. What does that mean?
that would be it with Medicare, like in this case, if you accept assignment, then the payment goes to you and then you can't balance bill.
Got it.
But if you don't accept assignment, then the payment goes to the patient and the patient's responsible for paying you your full fee, what you said.
That's an important checkbox to check or to not check. Thank you for that. Now, there is something I believe called, I want to say it's called an ABN that you can have the patient sign that allows you to charge something different or for a secondary appliance or something of that nature. Can you comment on that?
So it's not necessarily to charge them differently. An advanced beneficiary is typically used whenever you don't expect Medicare to make payment. So a lot of times I know that when people start doing Medicare, they'll just have patients sign an ABN to kind of cover themselves. You can't use an advanced beneficiary notice in that way. Those are typically used like if you are delivering an appliance. So let's say that you're delivering a non-hinged appliance. That's when you would use an advanced beneficiary notice to let the patient know that the service is not going to be covered by Medicare because it's not a covered service, and they have some options as to what they want to do from there. They can choose to have the service rendered, have it billed to Medicare, knowing that it's going to reject, it's going to deny. They can have the service rendered and choose to pay out of pocket, which is the ideal, or they can totally decline the service altogether. So the patient has to fill out that form, but that's what the advanced beneficiary is used for, is when you don't expect Medicare to make payment for whatever reason.
Got it. That's really helpful. And I want to ask, Alejandro shared for Ari, what is the lowest reimbursement you'd accept when becoming in network? And are y'all mainly in network or out of network with insurance companies? We answered that a little bit earlier, but two parts. One, what is the average in-network fee that you see people contracting with, John and Laura? And then what percentage of clients would you say are in-network, out-of-network for your respective billing companies? Rough guess. Go. John, how about, I'm going to pick on you first, so that we can give Laura more time to think.
What's the question? What's the range for?
Yeah, what are the range for in-network contract rates for appliances, and roughly what percentage of your clients do you think are in-network? Or yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah, I mean that range can vary greatly across the US. I mean, it's just it's all over the place, and especially in high cost of living versus lower cost of living. I would say in-network could be as low as 1,100, and then but we've seen some good ones too. I'll say what I really like is TRICARE.
Oh, yeah.
If you can get it down with TRICARE, I always recommend that because they pay really high.
Okay, cool. And what do you think? You got like a 30-70, 80-20 kind of rule going on? I know it's rough.
Yeah, I'd say about 1/3 is in network, 2/3
Okay.
out of network,
Cool.
maybe 70-30, like you said.
Okay. Laura, what do you think?
Yeah, we're about 70-30. That's a pretty good number. Now, as far as ranges, again, it can be as low as 1,100, which I would not accept that contract. I've also seen contracts that allow the full build charge. Those are super rare, but they happen. But I would probably say you're looking anywhere from $1,800 to $2,500 on average for a contract. would be my guess. You're gonna have Blue Cross drag you rate way down, and then you're gonna have the other ones that allow a little bit higher, but I would probably say average $1,800 to $2,500.
Okay. Yeah, that's a good range. Dr. Spadafora said, if gap denials are becoming a problem, isn't it best to go in network? And how do you keep patients when insurance companies are pushing them to the in-network provider in your area?
Yeah, I
That's
mean,
a
that's what I was kind of saying earlier, is that those are the factors when you want to start looking at going in network, is if you're struggling with getting the gaps, and your case acceptance is kind of dependent. You're seeing a lot of price objections. The first thing I would do is contact Awaken to Sleep though, and make sure you're selling on value, because insurance or not, that's a huge factor, because even if you're in network and you're billing insurance, you're still going to have cases where they have a high in-network deductible, and or whatever the case may be, it could be paid for, and the patient still, if they don't see the value, they're not going to move forward with treatment.
absolutely. One other thing, just so we had this with a coaching client, the patient was referred to two different in-network providers, one of which was not open anymore, and the other which who stopped doing oral appliance therapy because they sold the practice to another provider, and they just stopped doing it. And so it took some debating, some calling, some arguing, but they were able to actually get them to pay out of network because the nearest actual service providing in-network provider was like 2 hours away. And so do your due diligence, follow up with your patients, because chances are they haven't gone there, and those exigent circumstances can really be the place to go. So real quick, I'm going to hit these last two questions and we're going to wrap it up for the night. I just realized that the message I sent with all the links never went to everyone. It only went to the hosts and panelists, which doesn't help all of y'all on the call. So I just resent that so you have all those links. Dr. Tony said, is it true that they're requiring oral appliance before Inspire? That's actually always been the case, but it was kind of a sign this paper that you're not going to do it type situation. There's now insurances requiring proof of failure, not all across the board, but Blue Cross Blue Shield, I believe. No, that's wrong. It's the other one.
United Healthcare.
Thank you. United Healthcare is requiring it. And so usually when one of these guys gets on the boat, they all follow along within about 12 months. So you can expect that to go across the board. Off topic, but sorry, any updates on getting monitoring sensors? I'm guessing he's talking about things like the night owls and different HST units like that, or her, I apologize. Yes, there's a problem with home sleep tests all over the place. ResMed stopped making their apnea link airs, Philips, the Respironics Alice Night ones. You can't find night owls anywhere. I'll say this, give us a call. We know who to call. We've got a lot of companies we work with who provide great home sleep tests. And I think we even have a couple that we'd be happy to give to you as well. So schedule a call with the coach. We'll help you find out where you need to go next. John, Laura, Alejandra, thank you so much for your time tonight. One last question. I know I kept you longer. What is the number one thing someone should do after leaving this webinar to help grow their sleep practice that they should do to not lose momentum? I'm going to start with ladies first. Alejandra, what would you recommend?
I would recommend like the beginning of the year to set a goal. I read yesterday very interesting, it was one of those phrases that if your dream doesn't scare you, it's not a dream, or don't follow it. So I guess that's the first step. That's what I would strongly recommend. It's completely doable. I mean, we sold our dental practice a few years ago. We dove into sleep completely and totally and only, and it has paid off. It was not easy. I'm not going to say that it was easy, but we set that dream, and the dream was big, and we're starting to see it. A lot more dentists are doing it. Yeah, the competition, it's really high, but it's completely doable. There's way too many apneics, and there's way too many patients that need to be treated.
Absolutely. Laura?
I think the first thing that I would do after leaving this webinar is get your staff trained. I think that's probably one of the best things that you could ever do for your practice is to have your staff trained if you're really serious about it. I think also use Awaken to Sleep, use your resources, use your coaching that's available to you. I think those are the things that are really going to get you to be successful, or are things like being coached properly. So that would probably be the things that I would say to do immediately. And I know that's not necessarily medical billing, but if you can't lay the foundation, then you're never going to be able to bill medical.
Wow. Yeah, I think that goes back to one of John's very first things. Build the systems, do it right.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. John, last, definitely not least, closing remarks for the night.
I would say, I love this quote from Dr. Michael Gelb, is you're a sleep dentist whether you want to be or not, and you're either opening airways or closing airways. So find your why and get your team involved, get immersed in the industry. There's so many great aspects to it, in helping patients and the camaraderie with your team that you can build with it in the community. And that's just realizing that you're in it, whether
Mhm.
you want to be or not. Embrace it, and then set those goals. We do have a medical billing course February 23rd, 24th, so you can sign up for that one.
Yeah, check it out. Dentalwriter.com, newmanpracticemanagement.com.
Sure.
Sure. All
Google
right.
it.
Google it. You'll find it. That's right. And if you need help, you need recommendation on those courses, schedule a coaching call. Thank you, everyone. For those that made it through the overtime, this recording will be up tomorrow sometime, and you will get an email as well tomorrow time with the recording, CE links, and any of those pieces. And remember, masterclass in September, learn from the masters. We will be there, and we hope to see you. Also, there's only 25 spots, so don't think you can wait on it. So, see you, everyone. Have a great time, great week. We'll catch you next time.
Thank
Awesome.
you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Chad.